is stay in the course. Like, we get started on things and then we dissolve over stuff that when you really look back and reflect, it's so petty. So petty. Come out here, use this flat platform and get y'all stuff out the way that you want. Who cares?
Right.
Who's voice? Here's the part. If you can go, most of the people go to the record company and you don't even hear them. They become writers.
Right.
It's okay to be the writer.
Luxury Productions presents Survival of the Fittest podcast, a product for the people, by the people, where dreams go further than bullets. With your hosts, Lucky XL and Monz Logan. Let's go. Yeah.
Top of the morning, it's your boy Monz Logan, and this is Survival of the Fittest podcast. Now, today's guest is a brother who's a product of the South Side of Chicago, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in not just the city, but in the world, and said he was going to do something about that, and continued his education on receiving his first bachelor's from DePaul University, and he didn't stop there. He's like, you know what, man? I want to keep going. So not only did he get one master's, but did he get three masters? Three masters, right? That's a master in special education, secondary education and teaching, educational leadership and administration. And he said, you know what? I'm not going to stop there. I got to put that doctor in my name. And he went on to get his doctorate in education from the University of Illinois. And bring it to the mic right now, we got the principal of King High School, Dr. Brian Kelly, or just Kelly, for those who's in the know. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How's it going?
Man, it's excellent, brother.
When you say all that, I'm like, he must be broke. Come on, Biden, with these student loan recovery.
I need wipe all that
up. Say, man, you gonna burn those degrees with me with my ashes. I'm gonna still owe them. But yeah, it's exciting to be here, man. It's exciting every morning. Just opportunity to talk about things we share in common. And the things we try to do every day to serve humanity is always exciting, and I don't lose my breath over it. It very much. It's like every morning, wake up excited. 6:45, 7 o'clock, I'm at the door trying to greet the kids every day, if my schedule permits me and everything. And so this here presents or provides is giving me the same type of joy.
I understand. Okay, so man, walk us back to the beginning. What put that bug in you to be the man that you are today?
Man, I am today. I don't know, man. I feel like a 14-year-old, 50-year-old, 14-year-old man. I tell women all the time, I had this 19-year-old curiosity still in me. And a big part of it is having that joy, that, and curiosity. I'm going to use that word about life and different experiences and everything. And how do I provide, particularly if we're going straight into education, provide my students a different experience that I had as a student in Chicago Public Schools, but my teachers a similar experience that I had as a teacher in Chicago Public Schools. And one is just trying to be a great leader. I don't like the phrase role model, but somebody would just demonstrate stick-to-itiveness and grit and models working every day hard to be comfortable in their skin. But when I go back to address your question, it's like my brother was a teacher. My mother was grimy. And so, waking up every morning, 4:30 to, get on the train to go up to Lincoln Park to, be a nurse's assistant or whatever she was doing at that time to feed, 6 kids. So 7 of us, 2-bedroom apartment growing up, across the street from St. Bernard's or St. Bernard, as people would say locally.
Right.
St. Bernard's is what they say on the news. 2 blocks from the elementary I went to, elementary school I went to, Walter Reed, 3 blocks from the church I was baptized in that burned down recently.
And what neighborhood?
All of those things was Inglewood's finest. And so it has this negative connotation to it. I didn't know Inglewood was a bad place or whatever bad means, because things are subjective, or one of the most impoverished communities, because I grew up with stability. I tell people, I don't want to give you this sob story, because I was like, my mother walked down the street every day at 4:15, and we ate well like most people in the world every 2 weeks when the check came, and there was the days where there was bread and butter and things of that nature, but also, we had rats the size of cats downstairs, and roaches everywhere, and you clean this place and to was home. And it was actually nostalgia for me. Like anytime I get a chance to be with my family, I drop everything I'm doing to be there to just have those moments. But that's where that grind came from, essentially, growing up in that community, being in that house. And the house was tough, man. Like you better have a sense of humor. You better have, some of us, it's tough to be around us, but the things that I learned in that house and the things I learned getting on the bus and walking to school and, the ins and outs, that's how I'm able to sit there and just navigate, our society.
No, I get it. You mentioned St. Bernard. I was born in St. Bernard.
You still alive?
Right, exactly. So I tell a lot of people, man, I got purpose, man. A lot of people didn't make it. Benji died in St. Bernard, right?
Yes. I can still see that vividly.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
So going back to something you said earlier, you said you want to give your students a different experience than you experienced as a student. Talk to me about that. What was student life like for you, or the student-teacher relationship, when you were in school?
Well, one is students now, there's this thing that they're pushed, know your kids and come to things, this and another. We play sports at Dunbar, we play sports at elementary school, and you didn't see those individuals. 80% of teachers, or 90% of teachers are white, 90% of teachers are female. A lot of those people that look like that in Inglewood. So you didn't see them outside of those spaces, right?
Right.
And then it comes through back then, we had 10 TV channels. And so you had this very narrow scope of what the world was like. And they definitely had the same type of lens about the kids that they were serving. So sometimes it might have came across as if they was doing us a favor by being there. But what I like is that they set us down. They reminded us that, this is what you are. And they would use the N-word, right? And this is what you need to do. You have to work 5 times harder than somebody to be the janitor. I'm 10 years old. I'm sitting there like, who wants to be the janitor? Like, who wants to do that, right? And so while you're learning these things, there was never this, the table wasn't set for why you need to know it. Like, you just did things. It's like, now the kids demand today to have relevance and connection. This is why you're doing it, so you'll be able to do that. So I always tell them, geometry is not particularly important, and I can give them, but I say that if you shoot pool, you're talking about angles. Also about geometry is you're learning how to apply theories to the problems, right? And you use that information to do other things. You're going to do that. I had to do that walking down the street or getting off the bus, right? So that part. So education was very real in that sense to me, and I used those experiences to teach them. But there was no teachers in the community that looked like me. The police didn't look like me. And the principal sat in his office. So I didn't have an experience with him. My assistant principal, Mr. Lockett, who may rest in peace, every time I get promoted, I call my mom, like, hey, I'm Mr. Lockett. Hey, I'm Mr. Navarez, right? And those types of things, but I didn't want to be him. He sat in the office of my elementary school, didn't know him. And, Dr. Stevens down at Dunbar, Dr. Banks down at Dunbar, we had those individuals, but principals was in this elite place. You can touch us today. You can touch teachers today and make them real. And you're more inspiring for kids than you never. And I didn't get inspiration from them. My brother was a teacher. I wanted to be a PE teacher like him. Like, oh, I can go to school every day and play basketball?
Right, yeah.
That's some cool stuff, right? And my daughter tells me, she's like, if you had become a gym teacher, I wouldn't have respect.
Wow.
But it's polarized because I was a first-year teacher at Morgan Park, and they invited all Black males to a breakfast, except PE teachers.
Oh, really?
Right.
That's disrespectful right there.
Disrespect. Overly disrespectful.
Right. And so, but it made me begin, as I share with you all now, walking through my experience as a principal, I'm really stepping into this, being a Black male, with what people perceive to have power, how it's adored, like adorare, like people walk in like, it's you. And it's that amazing in that sense. And to have kids do it, are they like, I want to come to your school because, I might have some Air Jordans on that day.
Right.
The originals, actually. Yeah. So that type of thing. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but more so it's about the inspiration and what I'm trying to provide kids. It's just opposite. It just wasn't, there was no connection. No one looked like me. The ones that did look like me, they used to talk about how smart their kids were than us. So it turned you off. And I was like, I meet educators now, and a lot of educators I know, their kids got disabilities. And not in a negative sense, like there's something wrong with an individual with disability, but it's a shift about the reality that back then is teachers taught or talked about how better their kids were than us. And now I'm in the same situation. And I was like, what does that mean? I never bring up my daughters to my students because it's not relevant about because their experience may be different. You know, me living, downtown and the kid coming from where I grew up at, that whole two different worlds.
Night and day.
You know, my mother used to say when I was in Inglewood, we're going to go to the zoo. Never made it. I'm downtown. I tell my daughter to go to the zoo. We got zoo passes and we've been to every zoo in the Midwest. And so those are the types of things that, exposure provides.
Yeah, I definitely get it.
And then I try to get, not to cut you off, I try to get that to my students.
Right.
So I open it up. What have we done this weekend to get to know them?
Right.
Hey, what, anybody did anything special? Let's share out.
Right.
Whose birthday today? Let's say happy birthday. Because I had kids whose parents don't speak to them.
So I know you speaking on inspiration. Who were some of the people that inspired you? I know you said your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some other people that inspired you.
I'll go back to my mom, but really, and I could talk about my boy Wayne and you guys, and it's different individuals, but a big part, I always talk about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. Those people are abstract to me, so I always try to bring it down to earth. And I started with that little girl. She'd be 25. Hell, I'm 24 years old. Her mother says she's pregnant. I'm like, oh my God. And the responsibility, having the responsibility of child is, extremely scary and extremely exciting. They don't come with instructions. And that's what I tell people about, like being in the position I'm in. Right. Instructions came with this. You got to figure it out. You create the ideal, right? And so my baby girl the most, and my mother, and the women in my life have always, I might not treat women good in my personal life, but the women in my family, my familia, they are the ones that have inspired me because they're the ones that's always taking care of me too. So I was sharing with some colleagues, every school I've been in, there was 2 old Black ladies that took care of me. So Miss Bay, Morgan Park, thank you. Miss Little up at Taft, thank you. Miss James at Westinghouse, thank you. Miss Parker at Kennedy, thank you. Hey boy, and it was like, put that suit on. And, and those are the things that reminded me of what it means to put your shoulders back, have your head up. The things that they teach you that you didn't do. And then all of a sudden somebody see you doing it. And so those are the different individuals. A lot of my inspiration just came from watching other people be great and figuring out how do I find my greatness.
Okay. So what does it mean to be Black and educated in America? What are some of the benefits?
Benefits? I laugh because, I'm a U.S. history teacher. I was a social studies teacher. And I was like, being Black in America has never been. When it has been a positive, even when it was affirmative action. It's like,
got to be some benefits to be educated.
Benefit. Yeah. I'm going to tell you this. Being how you go in and you do the head nod? You might be in Vermont. That it's connection, universal. Right? Yeah. So you get that piece. So there's the head nod, then there's the nod down. There's that acknowledgement, right? And being educated and really you're overturning stereotypes, not just, outside of people that look like us, but within our own group, that piece there, because people don't expect it. I mean, I've been a janitor, nothing wrong with them. I've been I'm always an athletic director, coach, security. I've been everything, but that's not the first thing. Like now, it's like, well, who the principal? That dude walking through the building with his hat cocked. Right. That's the principal. And so some of the perks is that for me, that I identify as being able to connect with families, whether they're, part of the working poor or the working class, or whether they're middle class. We all aspire to make sure our kids are safe and that they have a great experience. That's, I think, one of the benefits. But I do still believe that, I can end up like Sandra Bland, man.
Okay, well, opposed to being Black and educated, what about being Black and uneducated? There's got to be some pitfalls to that.
I could end up like Sandra Bland, man. So when they pull me over, don't move. So I don't see the difference. I mean, Malcolm X said, what? What'd they call you? You're a Black man with money, you're a nigga. You're smart, you got a doctorate, you're a nigga. anytime that we can come back in this, particularly in this society, and you come back to be something they can debase you, I don't understand the perks. I'm scared every day. Every day. I approach walking out my door the same way I approach preparing lessons for my students. I didn't know if it was going to be sticky. I don't know if I'm going to come back. I don't walk around with that fear because blacks, we can normalize trauma, right? And so I don't know if it's like that, but when I look at the base level, I don't see the difference. Because Obama, he can get Sandra Bland too.
Yeah, I mean,
Look,
it's definitely a fact.
So you like, what? It's an educated black man. Then people that look like us from the neighborhood I could be the uppity this. I was watching Snowfall. Old boy was following the rules. It's the last episode. And he's like, he called him Uncle Tom. And I just want people to get it right. Uncle Tom had conviction.
Right.
You can call them Bojangles.
Right.
Oh, dancing, shuffling the guys, and don't stand up for anything. And so those are what an educated black man has more work to do, right? To fit in with his own most of the time and finding his group. Always finding your group is extremely important. And when you don't have that group, you can find yourself being on the outside looking in quite often. It's very, I use the word scary, but it's very challenging.
So what helped you find your group,
I think I'm still looking for it, man. I think the kids, I read this thing one time when I just figured out how to be 3, I turned 4. And that's why I come back to those numbers. I'm like, I'm all of those things in one. So I'm always learning. I'm 50, about to turn 51 in probably 6 months. I'll still be figuring out, like, I still got that 19-year-old piece in me.
Right.
And so that's how I connect with everyone. It's like, level of joy. Like, people was like, why are you so intense? And I was like, man, I'm comparing what I do to, like, Michael Jordan. He say, that person might have came from this place to, from North Dakota to see me, and it might be the only time they get to see me. I'm going to give them my best. So every day I wake up, in case I don't make it back tomorrow, I give the kids that I serve, the teachers I serve, my best on that day.
So walk me through a day with Mr. Kelly, or Kelly, through those halls of our fabulous King High School.
Oh man, it's funny. Someone came up to me, and I guess they had just been watching for a while, and I was out of the building last year for a stretch. And he like, what does it feel like to be the principal? Because they got a chance to see it. Like when I went in, then they see it or watching from afar when I'm there, right? And I was like, I can't describe it. Like, you have to be able to do it, right? And so saying hello to everyone, a kid interrupting, walk in right now. Are you busy? They can see us doing this. Are you busy? What do you need? And they get a pop and they say thank you. And so it's the part of it's like it varies. So it just serving staff, particularly staff that look like me, who are very fond and excited about you. One guy was like, Kelly, you gonna be the principal here as long as you want. and they laugh like that because this is a school that has a history of getting rid of principals, right? And so a reverend today was like, how's it going? I said, I got a second contract. Right.
Things must be going well.
He 92 years old, and I was stuck on his teeth. Like, he had on those old 92-year-old shoes. I was like, I don't never want to live that long when you wear the shoes and the dust collect on them. But his teeth look great.
Right.
But he was a reverend in the community, he understood. And he's like, I remember your first day, and we prayed for you. I said, man, keep praying. Right? And so, but the day in the life of the principal, between juggling politics, everybody wants their way. So everybody's always trying to I would say pull the wool over your eyes to get what they want. And I'm always like, I can give you what you want, but can you help me answer these 9 questions? Because what you may ask me to do may throw something off on this end. And so I have to keep the balance. Everything has to be balanced within our ecosystem, right?
We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor, Playpen Vodka. This premium vodka is gluten and sugar-free. And it's the only vodka that's cold vacuum distilled at temperatures of 50 degrees or below for that smooth and clean finish. Playpen Vodka, pour then play.
So since we're on the topic of King High School, tell us about how it was before you got there, the numbers, the graduation rate, the enrollment,
Mm-hmm.
and how it is now and the impact that you've made?
Man, I like to start at the end, really. And we talk about, I don't know if it's, you know, you in the chair and when you become a leader or whatever that means, you really brag about what you've done. You brag on yourself. You're trained to do this, right? This is what I like. He taught you the word impact. But when I got there was 486 kids in the building. Next year, we're going to be at 671. And, you know, one time in the last couple of years, I increased enrollment by 125% in a 2-year period during a pandemic and in a city that's shrinking. So there's only 750,000 Black residents in Chicago. We lost 1.2 million people from 1980 that look like you and I since then, right? For a variety of reasons, right? And so then to think that you're doing these things in spite of, like I stand before staff and I'm like, with my badass education that I received, badass being not good, I'm leading you all in spite of. So that what if I had the same books you had, right? And so, or maybe I might not have had the same motivation. So I always try to be balanced in my lens at looking at things. But 2.59 GPA when I got there, 3.80. 88% attendance, 93% attendance now. Graduation rate was around 89%. We're up to 99.1%. I went over enrollment, right? Attendance is up, GPA is up, sports teams are back. The building is clean. You know, it's everything. And so a big part of it is just simply, I call every family that selects us. We're a selective enrollment school.
Right,
that means you're locked out. And so, but every family that ranks us number one, I call them. I offer them a tour of the school. We go over the first floor. I tell them, I show them the wall of excellence. This is my top 10 kids per grade level. I go over everything that I just shared with you all. And I sell them on the vision of what I want them to experience. Right. And so a lot of times the families are selecting the school because of the leadership. And stability in anything creates comfort. And so the building has been stabilized over the last 4 years. Right. And that's what's been. So prior to that, you know, Hadia Pendleton was shot and murdered a couple of blocks away from the school. The principal left. Then there was almost 7-8 years of what we may call or characterize as dysfunction. And so to come in and to really like settle that community. And I remember, you know, a colleague of mine, guy we went to high school with, and I would call like my mentor, I would say Dr. Jones. He said, if anybody could do it, Kelly, you could do it. And so then even the guy that, you know, asked me to apply, I was like, how do you know I was going to win? He said, when you came in and signed the contract that day, so I walk in and I'm just expected to come sign the contract. And these guys got fried chicken out and everything. I said, hell, man, they should have called me.
Fried chicken.
I put my suit on. I don't eat in my clothes.
Right,
so when they see me eat, they're like, you eat? Just thought you drink Monsters all day. So it was, but they got this stuff out and it's this big you do, right? And I'm like, they don't know. I don't need like attention. Like I like to be behind the scenes, radar person. Like I'm a lead from the back. And so former CEO of CPS, Dr. Jackson, another mentor, said, the school will move when you start leading from the front. And so then
so that meant going out recruiting and
or just let me start talking. Yeah, but I was letting other people talk. So I'm staying back and I'm watching and in the neighborhood, you got your head on the swivel. You know, I'm looking out for landmines and all these other things. How do I not trip over the stuff that other previous principals have done, right? One of the famous ones is, what you gonna do about the dress code? Well, CPS has a dress code and I'm gonna follow it. That's it. End of it. My personal opinions about what a child wears, I can be against it or for it, but that's not my politics. Right. I'm not trying to force my politics on someone. I'm trying to make sure that we're in a safe environment so that they can grow in this nurturing space, right? That's it. And so it's being able to, like, I didn't think principalship was political, but it's very political in the sense of your head's always on the swivel and you're always calculated in everything that you're saying. And so when I started leading from the front now, for example, there was 150 families in there last week welcoming. Most of them was deciding if they were going to choose King to, as their school of choice, right? And one of the kid was like, "You nervous?" I said, "I was nervous 4 years ago when I got you in here."
Right.
I said, "Man, it's a cakewalk now." Because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure I'm going to wrap my arms around your kid. I'm going to demand that we're going to be in partnership for the next 4 years, period. And when I call, you better answer that phone. And I tell them just like that. But we're in partnership, and I'm going to reach out to you like you're going to reach out to me sometime with support and supporting your child. Other than that, and I'm going to treat your baby like I treat my own. And so that's how this shifts.
Man, that's important, man, because in my 4 years of high school, I probably saw my principal twice. I couldn't even tell you what her voice sounded like.
And that was, yes, I get you. I'm with you. Same era. And so there's principal that leads from the office. And that's cool.
Is that effective?
I hate meetings. It might be for them. I don't knock anybody. But I do know visibility changes everything. Understanding the people that you're serving change everything. Think about police in certain communities. You're from Hinsdale. So Laquan gets shot. Why? He was from Hinsdale. I might not shoot Laquan.
Because he looked like your next door neighbor or your nephew. Or your son.
Laquan, put that up.
Yeah.
What's your name, dog? You about to get lit up. You put it down. Right? Because I see the humanity in him. So it's easier to shoot somebody that don't look like you. It's like dropping the bomb on Japan.
Now, even speaking on that, we know in the news there's been, school shootings. I feel like it's probably one every year. But I noticed we don't see those in the urban community.
Don't jinx us.
I mean, yeah,
And Juarez is in the urban community. They was the drive-by on Juarez early in the year. Not to undermine what you're saying, but I know what you're asking. It's it's I'm against metal detectors. I'm against having a space where it doesn't, you remember Joe Clark?
Yeah.
Put your hands up. If we treat people like criminals, that's exactly how they'll behave. So what you do is you teach them, you start here high. I expect you guys to be great. And then you scaffold up. So you say high expectations with support. A lot of times we're working from the bottom because we don't have that connection and that love and that respect and that aspirations for them to be there, right? So it's okay to police people. But the shooting part is about people not feeling connected to me, when it's a school, when you listen to those individuals, might have lacked connection, lack connection, a sense of belonging, things of those nature attribute to some of those things.
I can understand that, and like even nowadays, mental health is a huge topic of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially after the pandemic, it changed a lot of things, and so I know when I was coming up in school, that wasn't even a thing, for real. We didn't have. Right, physical health was,
but no health. And when we took freshman year, first you're excited,
right?
We would do. We had gym every day, man. So one section, 10 weeks was health. You learned about vaginas and penises and don't touch this and don't touch this and these STDs. 90% of health now is social media and mental health. And identifying those things and depression. That's the paradigm shift since we've been out of school. At least Sean and I have been out of school, right? That's huge. And that's where kids are. A lot of it comes from, they're living out loud more. They're growing up faster. Sean don't tell me but I talk about the 6-year-old boy sending pics this is their world though. And so how do you navigate that space when, what is it called? Influencers? When your life is based on likes. Think about that. Yeah, you got this thing of you put a picture out there and somebody didn't like it. Now y'all going back and forth with somebody that you don't know, right. And it's causing you this level of anxiety. We're learning how to deal with those things. So like when I speak with parents, I need your support in supporting your child. There's times I have to go meet him at the door. Hey, here's what I need you to do. I know you want to overreact. He already told me how you was going to act. Don't give him what he's looking for. Surprise him. And then vice versa. So sometimes I protect the kid from the parent, and I protect the parent from the kid. That's the role. And it's having that level of insight that I would say, which helps me also have been effective in this particular setting. But to understand, like, you being sick of him isn't helping him. He's sick. You think he want to be sick? Like, nobody. It's not human to like want to self-harm. So think about it. Yeah, but I hear the but means you want to be stuck in where you are versus like yes and. And so those are the things. I'm educating adults too.
I mean, that's important because you have their kids, a quarter of the day.
Mm-hmm.
They got to go home those other 3/4, and they're going to unlearn everything that you taught if it's not being supported in the home.
And so that's a part about making it sticky. So every day got to have that consistent environment at home. And sometimes schools are, I never used to believe it, that safe space for individuals. It is that space. I had a kid, hey, come into school late every day and then go sit down and eat lunch, or eat breakfast. You don't think be in class on time? But he's not gonna learn anything in class anyway. If his stomach is growling, people are against it. But I have to understand that lens to meet his needs, so he can focus second period. So he missed first period, but maybe second period he could focus because he needed that break.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, I know we talked a little bit about social media. Is it a way that y'all kind of integrate that into the teaching with the kids, or as far as the kids and social media and bringing that into it because that's so big for them?
I don't know about if it's social media, but technology, I would say. If the kids, Gloria Latson Billings, she said if he doesn't like Shakespeare, teach him Tupac. So if they not locking in on what you're saying, find out what they're locked in on and use that as your platform. So I think it behooves us as the adults, who I think we're smarter than kids, to use those things, those engines, like we're Google, like Google's a search engine, to access the people that we were supposed to serve and educate.
Do y'all take away the phones from the kids when they come in?
I ain't taking no phones from the kids. Like a parent asked me, he said, we wear uniforms? I wouldn't even apply to be the principal or work in the school as a teacher if we wore uniforms. I think figuring out your identity, we're in the process of 14-year-olds trying to figure out who they are and trying to fit in and this, that, and another. And so, yes, there's times in which we do need to police some things. You need to police things so that you can get their attention in order to educate them. But you can't take the thing that they're used to educate themselves, whether you agree with how they're educating themselves or not, as a form of discipline. So now they ain't gonna listen to it at all. So you took the thing that you probably could use to get their attention, you took it away. Guess what they focused on? Shooting up the school.
Yeah.
And I dare you to say shoot up the school because now I'm gonna send you home. You're gonna need a psyche eval to come back. So it's I think we have been teaching post-agrarian, i.e., growing crops and everything. We're in a post-industrial society now, but we're still educating as if we just left the fields.
Right.
How do we begin to teach in a new manner and unlearn the things? Not unlearn, don't throw everything out. What's the phrase? Throw the water out with the bathtub or whatever it is. I don't like cliches and all that stuff. I don't like cliches, but not dismantle everything, but definitely intertwine TikTok and Facebook or whatever the platforms that they're using.
All that.
Yes, to get them to expose them to the things you think that they should learn. And that means the onus is on schools, people like myself, to hire those individuals who want to be innovative in their approach to educating kids.
No, it's definitely important. And so with you saying that, I know that you guys are CPS. Is there a across the board curriculum, or is there room for you guys to actually come in and make adjustments, from like a school to school basis?
Well, I believe in teacher autonomy and professional discretion. But when you're learning, I use my experience, right? I was a sociology major,
Right.
African studies major, right? I had minimal classes in history. In order to make myself marketable, I had to go back and take all of these classes so that I can get a job to be a history teacher, social studies teacher, right? Therefore, I don't know it the same way that I know sociology. So I use the textbook as what I would say my Bible until I learned it. We talked about automaticity earlier. So I was able to turn it thematically and make it so that it was, entertaining and engaging for myself to be able to, get the kids' attention. So CPS does have a universal curriculum. It is just what I just said, a template, a Bible for people to be able to use. But the first thing that what educators do in my experience is, because it's outside of our comfort, we discredit it. So yes, the curriculum is designed so that when they can compete with other kids from other zip codes. So if I get to school, the girl read The Invisible Man. You know who the hell The Invisible Man is about? Everybody sitting in this room. She has a leg up on me, and she didn't look nothing like me. So she read about The Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison, right? In her curriculum. But the teachers with my curriculum, Miss Kriegel, may she rest in peace wherever she is, but anybody that wanted to teach like Miss Kriegel can't work for me because she has a copy out the Reader's Digest. But my point was that when you all have that creates the level playing field when you have high expectations, when you have the supports and the resources in place to be able to get them there. And I think the curriculum is the baseline for that. So when you can go to a community in our society, and I just use Malcolm as an example, they don't know who he is. They don't know who Denmark Vesey is or Gabriel Prosser. That's a problem, right? Why did we, let's think now, why did we pick Martin Luther King though? So those are the types of things, like people talk about Muhammad Ali. Muhammad wasn't great till he got the shakes. He wasn't. They sent him to jail, stripped him of his titles. Then he get old and don't have no voice and he's the greatest. And so that part, teaching kids that part about being able to say, well, let's compare and contrast Parkinson's Muhammad versus, Brass or as truculent Muhammad, right.
So let's talk about a little bit more about the curriculum. What about finances and investing?
Needs to be taught. I'm actually trying to get it into school. Why? It's relevant. I'll have this thing where I want to push and challenge if I can set aside $10 for each kid taking a math class, right? And their grade is based upon them being able to understand math to do investments, right? I bet you the grades will go up and they'll learn about the stock market. And so we do need, this goes back to the shift overall. For instance, there's 2 geometric questions on the SAT, but we take a whole year geometry. So do we need to
add up?
Don't add up, right? So we got to start thinking about thinking math by levels, but how do we make math meaningful? Right. Like I had this thing like, teacher was an architect. I said, man, take him downtown and have a measure to see his style.
Right.
Now I'm mixing what you know and sharing your experiences with them to turn them on to their thing and making math meaningful and purposeful. So when they go home and say, see his tower was 1,617 feet. And it needs this much concrete and steel to be able to hold that structure in space. And actually what they need to do is dig down 1,617 feet to be in it. And so now they can put all of those into a formula along these things. But that's just me speaking out loud. But those are the types of things that I believe would make learning relevant, particularly when it comes to the subject of math. We're falling behind because what I've observed is math teachers don't think like the people that they're teaching.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
When you're a math person, you talk to another math person, they be like, yeah.
Right.
Now I'm not a math person. How do you get me to be there? And that's, I think, I've identified as some of the challenges for math teachers.
Man, shout out to Mrs. Green, my geometry teacher, my favorite math teacher ever. And I never forget, she brought in a TA, or a student teacher or whatever, for like a quarter semester, and she was failing all of us. Matter of fact, her name was Mrs. Griffin, not Green. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Griffin came in, she saw what was going on, like, no, I got to take my class back. And what she did is she made us all understand on the levels of how we learn. She was a true teacher, and you don't get many of those,
Well, we gotta be excited about people having success.
Right.
It's like, I always talk about like, made it to the Super Bowl. You don't talk about who lost.
Right.
We talk about who won. How do we find the winner in all the kids? And the winning in some kid might be, his 70 might be an A. Because if you didn't get the connection instead of another, he'll sit in your class and fail happily. I'll take it in summer school, And so how do you teach kids when you talk about the math literacy and all of those things? Really is teaching them about time. Like time is money, right? So to tell me in 7th grade, you should be a lawyer. I didn't think school was exciting. So I asked the wrong question. How long you got to go to school for that? It was like 7, 8 years. And do this? The real question was, if money was my motivation, how much do they make?
Exactly.
And now can I put all my energy towards going, doing something going towards something that somebody identified they said I'll be good at, with being inspired by the money? Because what I want to tell Mr. Reed, who said you should be a lawyer, I've been in school 20 years. So I should have been a lawyer.
Right.
And the difference between a lawyer is $500 an hour versus my $50 an hour.
Right.
Talk to us about the difference between public and private school.
Public and private. Public is, we're one of the only countries in the world to provide compensatory education. So that's a great thing. Dollars are committed to doing that. Private always comes along, and parochial schools is about, think about faith, think about commitment to and like-mindedness is what's a phrase that I like to use. So I have parents who would say, well, I could send my kid to this school versus send her here. I said, well, here's what I did. See, part I didn't share is, of that 99, there's a 69% chance that when a kid comes through my school that they're going to finish college in 5 years. It's called a persistence thing, right? And thus this thing. So you can pay for that, or you can get it from my school essentially for free. And that's when we started talking about, the comparison and matching stuff. So, but most parents want their kids to be in a space where they feel safe first, right? And that it's preparing them for this future. And a lot of times that comes down to if you're Catholic or if you're Jewish and things of that nature. So I don't see the difference when you talk about numbers like public versus charter or public versus this. Sean went to St. Rita. 21 on the ACT, 3.1 GPA. He went to Illinois. I graduated 8 kids from Morgan Park that year. Same thing. Went to Illinois.
But isn't it somewhere that the parents want their kids, they think if they send them to a private school, they get a better education. All my brothers that sent their kids to private schools because they tell me they think they're going to get a better education than they will at a public school.
And a lot of that has to do, and parents today are now doing that research more. We grew up with parents, they had babies and you went to the neighborhood school. Now that people are more aware of things and of like-mindedness, and it depends on the community they live in. So if you go live in Oak Park, all the schools are good. Elementary school, high school, you may go to Fenwick, you might go outside of that, right? But then you go to Harvey, right?
Yeah.
Different socioeconomic bracket, different level of investment in those schools. And so public versus private, one thing is, for me, I don't see anything different in education because public school teachers, particularly in Chicago, have to be certified and vetted by the state, whereas you don't have to be in those schools. And then also the public schools make more money, but I still think they're pushing out the same thing.
I went to private school up to 7th grade, and I can say that they didn't do a great job in education. If I didn't have cousins who went to magnet schools their whole life, who were 3 and 4 grades ahead of me, bringing that to me, I've been way behind.
And so my daughter put it this way. So, we're in Oak Park, and she doesn't go to Oak Park River Forest. She goes to Trinity, right? She plays softball for Trinity. And so if she went to OPRF, she would have had 3 AP classes, all honors class as a freshman, right? She goes to Trinity. She's in this IB program. So she's in class. She comes home after freshman year, comes home. She's like, Dad, they not that smart. I'm like, hell, we might have to transfer.
Right.
Because she understood I'm only as smart as my neighbor. But most of the girls that she went to school with, so she went to public school in Oak Park. Trinity was in River Forest. Most of the kids she went to school with were products of elementary schools that were, Catholic, right? It's not about academic acumen. It's about parents feeling comfortable with the kids that they're sitting around. And so that's environment plays a huge role. And so she was there. She was like, she gets an IB World diploma and all of this stuff, right? Go on and start, college as a sophomore and things of that nature. But she understood competition and who's next to you in the classroom. And she's like, her public education prepared her probably much better than her peers who went to Catholic school as in elementary school.
Yeah, so we were having a little, off-camera discussion about the business education, man. Can you break that down a little bit more for the guests?
And I'm still learning it as we go along, but inside, whoever runs politics runs education. And so charter schools and school choice is very much a Republican thing. It started in certain areas. What's unfortunate around is like in Illinois, 60% of the state, or people being educated, right, there can be charter schools. It just happened to be in areas where there's people that look like me. So if you go Rockford, Decatur, Waukegan, Chicago, Peoria, right?
Right.
East St. Louis. Other than that, charter schools don't set up shop. But if I can, here's the thing about the business education, real simply. How do you get the best product at the cheapest price? And business education is the most expensive part of educating someone is human capital. Teachers are the most expensive thing, right? And so if I can pay teachers less and still get the same output, right, what do? So then you get the Pritzkers and people and all these nobles and things of that nature investing in kids. Because if the kid comes from an environment where he's already starting behind, right, the first 5 years of your life, you got to learn how to tie your shoes, know your colors, wipe your butt, this, that, and other. Then you go to kindergarten, which is one of the prereqs to be able to do. Then your primary years become an extension of what you learned at the house. If you're not getting that there, you're starting behind. So we don't make up for that part. So when Brandon, the new mayor-elect, talks about, making sure that you provide these things, that's to cut that gap. If not, those kids are always behind. And if you're behind, you become tracked. So it goes away from when I talked about high expectation with support, which we're just trying to have you at a standard. And so what people know and politicians know and business industry know is that if that's the case, we can invest in schools. There won't really be an expectation of us because that other part hasn't been cured. So you go in, you present something new and flashy to people that look like me because we like brown, gold, flashy things, right? Even if at the end it doesn't do anything better. So you say, well, it's what are the thing? We send 100, all the black males go to college. They ain't tell you what schools. Because they were going to Harvard. Guess what they would say? This kid went to Harvard this year. And we have to start saying, like I said earlier, it's not about getting in college. Our phrase in education is persistence, right? And so now I'm being held accountable for if my kids stayed in school, which means that I create an environment where they can develop grit. But if you come from an environment where it's been grimy at home, right, and you're starting behind, how do you develop the grit to do something later on when you might not have the economics? A lot of schools about economics. So we talked about earlier, I think schools should be free. I'm talking about higher education should be free. Oh, and the way that, but then you have this baseline where people are provided. I rather, I don't want to get into a socialist thing, this, that, and the other, but how do you say that after 400 years in this country, things aren't good collectively for people that look like me? And actually, it's worse than it was 60 years ago. So the business behind education is how are people tracked into certain things and perpetuates the same system, just looks differently. So it's a lot of money in it to be made. How do you move it from theory to practice and with consistency, which led into something else that you guys asked about in regards to should teachers, what was it, pay?
Are they getting paid their worth?
Are they getting paid their worth, which is very subjective, right? So it's like on the open market, you can go in and negotiate. But then the business of education is you only have so many dollars set aside for instruction, which is human materials and human capital. Human beings cost money, and as the market fluctuates, right? Cost of living increases, this, that, and other. That'll fluctuate the type of people that stay in education. The average person, lately, from what I'm reading, don't stay in education. They quit in the first 4 to 5 years. The average principal, the same thing.
Why is that?
People say the stress of it, this, that, and other. I just think, systemically, I read something. People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad leadership, right? And that's not at the school level all the time. That's at the political level. And then, educators and principals and things, leaders of schools become the scapegoat because we're trying to solve societal problems in the institution of learning.
Now, knowing all of this, like, how do you keep the teacher morale high?
Man, that's the $1,000 question, and work
Only
hard at it. Only 1,000. You say million, but a whole bunch of, because I also think teaching is very altruistic, very instinctive, and you have to be self-inspiring. Like I show up for these babies, right? I show up for these babies because I would want somebody to show up for mine. And I think if your motivation has to be from outside all the time, are you truly motivated? So it's tricky for me because I worked very hard to be able to self-reflect and say, no, this is me. I have to own this. This is what I got to do differently. And I think we grew up, since that lady spilled that coffee on herself in the car, we're in a society now where there's everybody, can accept responsibility or accountability for themselves. But keeping them inspired, I do this thing every year. I try to be in tune with them. It's difficult for some. I'm super silly, but I'm an introvert. So I kind of gravitate to people I feel comfortable with. And it's part of the job. It's something that I'm learning how to do. But and sometimes I probably put more energy in it with some than others, which is a human thing also. But I think for the most part, people wouldn't want to hear me say this, but I think you have to find your own motivation,
I agree with that, 'cause
I'm a guy, I wanted to be the best teacher. I wanted the kids to love me. And I tell them, Kelly funny. Now I'll say, and Kelly smart. Now I'll say I'm a good teacher. Like, make it the triangle. And so when they come back, I had kids at college come back and say, man, the toughest class I had was yours. And they took calculus. But my thing was they were used to copying out of a book. And I said, that's not what I'm asking you to do, man. I ain't give you 3 questions so you can copy out the book. You gave 3 questions so you could think.
Right.
Like, hell, be legendary in your thought.
Right.
Let's go back to something that you said that I found interesting. You say teachers leave bad leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership has a lot to do with it. How would you describe a good leader, and how is your leadership style?
Evolving. My leadership style is evolving. There's just people that I just don't get along. So I see people come knock on the door. I'm like, damn. Hey. And I own that. Like, I'm aware of that. Like, and how do I begin to work on it so that I can give them the same experience that I give students? No student comes to my door and I'm like, damn, you again. And so, and a lot of that might have to do with how I was raised or brought up. And I think, something about me is figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. There was no instruction that came with a kid. No instruction came with a principal. No instruction came with teachers. They gave you these templates. But then it's up to you to how do you apply those things, right? So I think a good leader gives the autonomy and some guidance and support along the way. They have an open door. They're available and visible, and they walk the walk. So like when there's crisis, I don't send emails. I look people in the face and say, "This is what's going on. This is the announcement. This is what we're going to do next." I think leaders show up. I think leaders are honest and transparent. I think and I think leaders are vulnerable. You come out and you naked. They say there's somebody outside with a gun. I walk outside. There's no call the police. No, I'm going outside.
Right.
So you don't call the police, then go outside?
Well, we have protocol. Well, no, because typically the police might have told.
Right. Like, hey, man, this dude got a gun outside.
Right? But I tell the people outside of my building, the network and the central office, But at the end of the day, I'm outside. Why? I got to protect those babies. Go inside. What? Go inside. I got time to expend energy. And and at that point, they become my kid. And so I think, that what makes a good leader and how am I? I think I'm an evolving leader and figuring it out on the job. And I don't mind failing publicly. I'm naked all the time and I'm comfortable with it. Like one of my lines, like I'm always working on my communication and I'm always, working on being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I don't like attention. Like, I don't want to sit up here and have to, Ms. Kelly, is there anything that you want to say? Not really. I'm security right now.
So why do you say you're naked? What does that mean?
Naked, just vulnerable. I'm out here. So, how you stand, I always compare teaching to being a comedian. You walk out, you don't know if what you say is going to be funny, right? And so teaching was like that. You prepare something, but you don't know if it's going to stick, right? And as a leader, you walk out all the time. Everybody, he wear this on Friday. Kids can't wear a hat. Kelly wear a hat.
Right.
Everybody got something to say.
Yeah.
All the time, right? Who you speak to, who you don't speak to. He drinks Monsters every day. Like, he don't eat.
They watching every little thing.
Wait a minute. They order lunch. They don't order me lunch.
Right.
Well, you don't eat.
Right.
And so those are the things that are just hilarious. You walk in, everybody stop talking, right? And so it's like you're the gossip, right? Or you're the most popular person. And this is funny.
Being in the position of leaders, yeah. When you work for somebody, you don't want to say certain things when they come in the room.
And they not themselves. And so they're not themselves, right?
Right.
And I tell everyone, I say, well, everything circle backs to me.
Right. You go figure it
out. And I'm going to address it. And that's the thing of leadership. You address things. So when it goes up the ladder, you have to address things that gut feeling that I learned in group home when the kids start acting crazy.
Right.
You better say something. When they go up the ladder as the leader, you have to say something. So you look at, Mayor-elect or the old mayor. It's like, what was she going to do during the pandemic and how she was going to save us?
Right.
But she had the people looking at her like she was going to do something. What the hell she was going to do? She just as vulnerable as us.
It was a lot of pressure on her.
Right.
She was a black woman. She stuck in the crib too.
I'm getting a call. Right. It's January of 2020. So we're not in COVID yet, but it's coming. So what are y'all going to do about such and such? Well, I'm going to follow the city guidance, ma'am.
Right.
What you mean what I'm going to do? Y'all going to close the school? I don't determine if school closed. Why y'all expect me to know this? And so I go from being a person that knows how to teach kids, right? To I got to be able to solve the world's problems because I became the principal. That makes no sense to me.
Because you're at the top of the ladder, so they want you to have the answers.
Yeah.
Period. And that's the part about leadership you got to embrace, right? And put it back out there on people so that they understand, so they can hear themselves. Then you can start having a conversation. So I've learned more than anything is I apologize more than I've ever apologized in my life. But when I say something publicly,
right,
I got to hold myself accountable. And so that part there is the position of strength that I think people who step up to lead others, that others haven't do it. Because, it's like, raise your hand. And people step back. When we finish, I put it out there. Like, I'm the only one that raised my hand to do this. So we can all be critical of me, but make sure that you don't live in a glass house and throw rocks.
Right.
And those are the things that, like, I'm be me, like, or whatever me means, they evolve in me, but I'm not afraid to shy away from things that make me uncomfortable.
I mean, that's where the growth comes from. And to see, somebody like you who, like you said earlier, we mentioned, you come from the neighborhood that these kids are currently living in. So you understand what it's like to be from these environments, but you also are an example of what you can be if you apply yourself.
And so my one thing is, like, I love the women, right? And they treat their girls different than they treat their boys. But I'm always amazed with my kid is too good to get on the bus. You know what you learn from being on the bus?
A lot.
And we're denying them. Like, when I finish and the parents be shaking their head, I agree, but my baby getting in the car. Right? But you're denying them those opportunities to learn.
Yeah.
Like, you can't my nephew is about to graduate. and become a molecular chemical person at Loyola University. My sister-in-law has shaped every decision this boy has made. So I'm like, does he really want to do this? Is this what he's doing, what she wanted to do? And when he going to start living his life? Right? And so I get guiding and protecting and this, that, and other. But at what point will we look and say, well, this is the fruit of my labor? Like, look what my daughter does. My daughter in New York now. Fly. I call it being the bird. Be the bird. Go out and see. Like, you ain't worried about her? No. She got elements of me, elements of herself, and I taught her how to think. When she goes someplace, I say, be safe, always. And I trust in the things that my mother taught me. Like, yeah, be believable, have conviction, wake up with purpose. Like, we go from there and do all things with love. Love for self, love for others, love for God. But these are the things, every speech I give at graduation is I lead with these principles my mother taught. And so that piece there, my mother was a one-word person. Don't do that. Brian, like now I say some shit like, Brian.
You know what that means, right there.
Yeah, you're like, okay, mama.
Brian, well, you gotta be understanding. Yeah. What was the damn understanding when you was whooping me with the extension cord?
She more advanced now. You gotta be more understanding now.
They just kids. Yeah. And here's what I learned. In my heart of hearts, like before I became a principal, I probably never called the students I serve babies. They are babies. I'm 50 years old. You a baby up until you're about 30, in my opinion, right?
Right.
And you're figured out. Don't mean you need to handheld the whole goddamn time.
Right. Absolutely.
But they are in the level in naivete, right? And they still like kids. They still like adults until about 15.
Right.
And you go through a couple of rough year patch. But in general, they're babies that needs to be shepherded and pushed and guided in a certain direction. And a lot of people don't believe in it because we want to do what we were taught. But I didn't whoop my daughter with an extension cord, right? I didn't. Now, my 4-year-old, I say, you're going to be the first baby I beat the hell out of her. But I look at her and see me.
Right.
And I say, you might be doing dumb stuff the rest of your life.
So do you see yourself as a father figure to the kids?
I wouldn't say that, but yeah. Like there are times I shared, like, they gotta wrap our arms around them. Like, I'm the principal, right? So they asked me for some today. Can we go upstairs, Kelly? We got such and such key. Is there an adult upstairs?
Right.
Then no. Right. That's just the principal, because I got to protect myself from whatever goofy stuff might go on, right? But now it's a girl going upstairs with 2 boys. Now I'm your daddy. What you going on with you?
Like that picture don't even look right.
So my facial expressions change, right?
Like that's
my tone changes. Yeah. What do you mean? And so I'm always, it's a lot of psychology in all of this, right? And so, you're the principal, but then you're this and you're that, and they learn to trust you and you believe in each other. You support them and push them and challenge them. So in that sense, I would say, yeah, those words would come out of my mouth. Baby is going to be the closest tenderness they get from me.
Okay, now speaking of psychology, what is learned helplessness?
I think we covered this one before, but this is a situation where everything has been done for you. It goes back to my nephew I was talking about. So he's passed the test and everything. But if my best example is my daughter's away at school, her toilet is messed up, and she calls me.
Right. What I'm gonna do, Tony?
What I'm gonna do? What do I do? The toilet messed up. You got a plunger?
Right.
Right? You call the landlord?
Yeah.
Like those types of things. So it's when they're put in a situation to not be able, it's the opposite of what I'm saying. Not allowed to fail and execute the things that you showed them. It's like we don't trust in our process.
That's character building.
Yeah. You got to trust the process. Like you work all week. My daughter plays softball. She work all week. She'll get play of the game on Saturday. I got to play of the game. I ain't surprised you worked all week.
Right.
You hit me in my shins. You finally threw strikes on Saturday. Right. That's why we did it, right? And so to learn helplessness is when people, and parents do a lot now because their baby might have something what they consider to be a deficiency. And so they want to protect them from the the world from this and others if we don't see it. So they don't put them in a situation where they can start maximizing their strengths. They begin to get defined by what they don't have. And that's that part there. And so adults get it too. But kids get it in a setting where, and it starts with low expectation. Nobody expects anything of me. I'm going to. And so that might not be the technical definition of learning helplessness, but I provided examples of like, this is how it plays out.
Right.
But when you can't get up and do, you know what babies do it too? They learn how to do. They fall, they get up and they try it again. They wobble till they get their balance, right?
Yeah.
Learn helplessness is when you just lay there.
You looking around somebody come pick you up.
Get
right?
me.
Yeah.
Right. And that part there, like, man, you better figure it. And it's a line of mine. Like, I figured stuff out.
Now, do you think society plays a huge role on, like, today, how some of this learned helplessness can be perpetuated?
Remember, I go back to the lady who she went to McDonald's to get the coffee that she liked. And if they served it cold, she would be mad.
Right.
They served it hot. She went there to get hot coffee, put it between her legs, and it wasn't her fault. That's where we're at.
Yeah. That's crazy. See the reason why they had to put the stamp on there. Yeah.
It's hot.
Right. It's coffee, but just so you know, it's hot.
I got to announce that it's hot, which is the reason that you went there.
Yeah.
So now you got the rings around it and they protect everything. But that part there, so, you know, always in my classroom, we like to challenge conventional wisdoms. And so there was like things that are common sense, but let's really put it to the test.
Right.
So I was in a classroom this week and chemistry class, and she's doing a unit called Bills and Pills. And I'm like, cocaine is good. They looking around. I say, go to the dentist and don't get no Novocaine, and you'll agree with me.
Right.
Cocaine's a good thing. But we have to get them to, you know, think in the nuances of education. Like, think about all the layered. So crack might be bad. Cocaine might be good. Novocaine, cocaine in Novocaine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. Go get when you put stitches in.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. And so that part there, to get them to think through those lenses, and that right now where, you know, I hate to say this, but it's like either you're Democrat or you're Republican.
Right.
It's like you can't think or be, you know, in the middle of anything all the time. It's like nothing is mutually exclusive.
So what are ways that you help to, you know, keep that individuality with your children in the schools, but yet create a balance?
It goes back to making them feel safe and vulnerable. I was watching a video of the students saying about their experience here, and everybody's accepted. You know, I have a couple of female students that are identifying, you know, and the adults are looking, and I'm back. And I'm like, hey, what are your pronouns? He, him. I'm trans. And I'm like, but I have to. So now I got to make sure, because I don't know. Right. And me not knowing may make them feel uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, you can't learn. Right? Because you don't feel safe in the space. So my job, when you talk about this, you know, equality and equity in the school, is to make sure that foundationally everybody has a sense of belonging, and that you're putting people, and adults included, you know, and, you know, I have teachers, I'm gay. Like, I didn't ask. And nothing against it, but it's none of my business because I didn't say I'm straight, right? But how do I have that space where we can talk openly about those things so we can effectively serve the children? And and if kids sense anything, and they're very cerebral, for lack of a better word. I might be misusing it. But they can sense when things aren't right and when you're being true and genuine or not. And so is how do you do that? One, get to know them. Two, make sure that when there is an issue, made it to me, we got to address it. Like now, hell, bathrooms are, I don't know what the word is, but
gender neutral.
There we go. Praise.
Right.
I got signs
right,
up.
just say bathroom.
Yeah.
Right.
Girls, boys. Right. And so they're there, and I got a kid come down every day, 3rd floor, the longest trip to the bathroom ever. Use the bathroom right outside my office. Okay.
So let's talk about standardized tests. Are they biased, in your opinion?
Well, for instance, you eat pumpkin pie?
I do not.
Got you. And so if the test is using language that you're not familiar with, then the people who, wrote the test and speak in that manner, they have an upper hand.
So you think it's biased?
Okay. Or I say this, and to be honest, it's like, well, why do people, that speak Mandarin do better on a test? Well, they do better on math for sure.
Right.
Because math is universal. But when you have a better chance I used to teach this thing called asking the right question. So you have to understand what the prompts mean. So if you lack familiarity with those prompts, i.e. my kid, who came with 5 years behind environmentally, then got 5 years of bad school because he went to the same school in the same neighborhood.
Right.
When he go see that test, motherfucker not going to be on the test.
Right.
It just ain't gonna be there.
It ain't going to be there, right? And so therefore, it decreases when he can probably use it as a noun, an adjective, and a verb, right?
Right.
But it won't be something on the test that he will be able to. And so I don't know. I always like to, stay in the middle about the bias part versus this is what we should be teaching towards if this is the norm.
Right.
In our, whatever, because norm is changing, because now we probably should be learning more things in Spanish.
Right.
If you, push all those things American side. But I think the test itself is, I don't know if it's bias versus class. So
class
because if I'm familiar with the language, right, I'm going to have success versus if I'm poor and black and I'm not familiar with the language and I come from a certain community.
Right.
So that part there, I think, plays a role in all, and persons having what would be identified as success on those exams.
Now, you discussed with us before critical race theory. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, you guys pushed me a little bit. I was like, what the hell is that? Like, I've skimmed it. I'm not in the classroom, right? But when you start, remember I talked about the Invisible Man?
Right.
It was in her curriculum. They're saying that shouldn't be in the curriculum at all in certain places. And so what we're having to do is anything that is critical race theory, from my understanding, is anything that's challenging the status quo, the historic status quo, and should be put out of the books.
Right.
There's no place for it. And so how do you have an inclusive society where people learn about others if you're going to decide collectively through government agencies to take those things out that would inform other people?
Right.
And so this goes into some Dr. King where he was like, oppression hurts both the oppressor and the oppressed because they're being denied access to each other. And that's the same thing. It perpetuates that type of situation for me. So it's I don't know what it's in Florida and other places. I do think people remember the standardized test. They do better on things that mirror their lives.
Right.
They know this. Like there's nothing's a mirage. So if I can look and I know the difference between sweet potato pie and pumpkin pie,
then I got a better chance.
Yeah. Or I know karate. But I remember 9, 10 years old taking the Iowa Skills Basic Test, and the word karate is Karate. But on that exam, I had never seen karate, and I know the word karate. I know how it plays out, but I had never seen it written. So karate. What the hell you think I did on that passage?
I don't know nothing about no karate. Right? I don't know what that tastes like.
So
it sounds like a vegetable.
My comprehension of that whole text, because of lack of familiarity, impacted the way that I probably did in the exam. That's as simple as that, right? And so when we're denying kids across the United States the opportunity to learn something about Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Prosser versus what they see played out with this stereotypical stuff. Like my biggest thing that I challenge with the media is, why is it always okay to use the N-word? And 2, why is it always okay for black men to be disrespectful towards black women? Like that's our norm. And I was like, I didn't grow up like that. right? And so that part there, and that's why I like what you all are doing and what I encourage and want broadcasting in my school, so we can become the producers of us.
Exactly.
And when we're the producer of us, then we can get to control our destiny in regards to how we shape the way. And so what they're saying is we're gonna use laws to continue to shape the way the world or American society perceives you. That's tough. That's tough as hell. When you put it like, oh, we want to, there was some good Negroes?
Right.
Can't have them around.
You know. And I mean, and even, you know, that goes back. I was having a conversation with a young lady earlier about music, and she was like, man, you know, it sucks that these kids, they don't have, you know, the role models or whatever. You would think that, you know, these artists would get tired of, you know, they lose all their homies and they brothers, their family members, and they don't talk about anything outside of what they're talking about. I'm like, believe it or not, a lot of these youngsters, and even not even the artists, they want to live different lives. But when you have something that's satisfying a need, you know, so the labels will invest in the negative, you know, music that they put out. But when they try to spin the narrative and do something positive, they're not going to put that same investment behind that.
And so what I would like to look at based upon what you said, just real time thinking is, what if we own the label, right? And then what would we put out? Like I like Tyler Perry. He needs some better writers.
Right.
You know, some of the shows and everything. I like all of those things. But now that if we're in those positions to change the narrative, why aren't we doing it? And is it for greed to make money and to be viable? So what is it? Is it I want to sound like common sense? Right. But common ain't making sense.
Right.
Or whatever, however Jay said it, right? And that's the thing, like when you talk about getting in a position of authority, like how do you remain true to yourself? And that's the part. And I was like, you know, people look at me and they be like, you accept a lot of stuff. I said, yeah, I provide a lot of grace.
Right.
And I said, I sit before you because I was provided grace. And how do you wield that power? And so when it comes to those things, like, are we going to put the money above elevating? And then as Jay said, can we elevate if we don't have the money? It's a strange and dangerous paradigm. Yeah, you know.
But you know, I mean, the way I look at life, you know, money is only the agent to the experience.
It's the tool.
Right. You know, and so when we take the focus off of the money and more so on the experience, you know, we get a lot further because you're limiting yourself to say, I can only make this impact if my money is here, or if I'm able to do this, or I do that.
I agree with that in the sense of, because when you said that, what triggered in my head was the kid walking along the beach and, you know, all the starfish are there and he throws one back and it's like, what difference you going to make? And he's like, I saved that one, right? What's the end game? Like, so like people like, you win the lottery, you get some money. I said, I still want to teach. I would still want to teach. It's like one of the most, you know, I can't describe, it's not a word that goes into the level of excitement that comes with waking up in the morning and doing it. But I just think the rugged individualist mentality of America, right?
Right.
And we have this capitalistic society where you want those things. You're like, well, how much money is enough? Right. Or you pass down, like, you know, wealth. I'm not knocking any of those things because I'm poor, right? But the idea of it is, I think we lose out on valuable things and opportunities to connect with people on the human level and to put things out when that is the bottom line.
Right.
You know, it's the same thing. I have to make decisions between expensive teachers and inexpensive teachers when I have to balance a budget.
What does that mean? Expensive teachers and inexpensive teachers.
So a 20-year veteran teacher versus second-year teacher.
Oh, yeah, 20-year going to be
right?
way
and
more
so
expensive.
The contract protects the 20-year, 10-year teacher who makes $110 versus the new kid, if I have a budget issue, who makes $67,000.
So that would factor into the decision on who you pick?
Yeah, because I can get two people for one.
See, now you sound
So
like,
I gotta.
now you sound like an NFL owner. Like, wait a minute, this third-year player right here.
No, I'm
he can't get the second.
I'm Billy Bean. I'm Billy Bean, baby.
But younger.
I believe in Billy Bean. Billy Bean had a thing.
So the experience that older teacher has, as far as being around the kids,
Institutional knowledge and all that stuff, right?
that factors in also?
Mm-hmm. It does. It's probably how I kept a job.
Okay, now let me
Besides,
ask you
I was
this.
good. But
Right.
What,
So you still have to make yourself valuable.
yes.
now, let's talk about college. Should everybody go to college, and why is it so damn expensive?
I think college is a beautiful thing. I love you talking to. I might be the wrong person to answer. Like I tell people, they look at me and be
You went
like,
to six
I say
different
I'm a
colleges.
nerd. Yeah, like I say I'm a nerd, and the kids look at me like, I said, don't think Steve Urkel, think organized and responsible, right?
Right.
And then I said, people love nerds. Who wants to be with the dummy?
Right.
Right? And so, but I think the value of college goes back to all that stuff I put into you for 18 years. Let's see if it works.
As far as a parent.
Parenting. Or it's also college is needed to delay individuals into, the market economy. Because now you have the 75-year-old person competing with the 50-year-old.
Right.
And the 50-year-old could demand less, and you hire more of them, and it puts them out. So there's a bunch of, when I talk about the business of education, right?
Right.
But I think any learning is great. Trade, college, libraries, right? Like whatever you
Those still
do.
exist?
Yeah. Well, not in the manner we used to shut the hell up in the library. My kids TikTok in the library.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
So you got a library teacher?
Man, 110 grand. they like,
I wouldn't even think about a library teacher no more. They still exist.
People be talking to me about like union and everything. I said, the union to give you a job, I gave you a job. And so,
Oh, wow.
but schools has its place for everyone. Is a measured thing to slow down people entry into the market economy, right? As far as jobs. But I think the experience that you get from being in school, even if you stay home, is beneficial because it teaches you. I always go back and use this phrase, the nuances of an argument. Because sometimes your experiences are so narrow. My best example is my baby girl, she's 24, but she grew up in Oak Park, went to all-girls school, played softball. She's biracial. She gets to college, and she say she's sitting in class with a white dude off a farm in Minnesota. She said life didn't prepare me for that.
She wasn't ready for that.
And Trump was voted in 2 months later, right?
Right.
But she said she wasn't prepared for that. I was asking, she's like, everybody's here conservative, i.e., they don't like my half Negro self, right? And it took me to admit, like, she kept using conservative. And I was like, oh, but that's what school does. It gives you that level of exposure. I think it should be early. I think diversity, economic and cultural and social diversity should be forced upon at a lower level versus waiting to get to college when everybody's identity and everything is always shaped. What I love about kids growing up nowadays, even if they have this bullying thing, this and other, they are more accepting and less narrow than we were.
They definitely are.
I don't know if it's social media, but just the things that they're taught in school. Can't make fun of Billy. Billy has feelings.
Right.
Now they go back to the mental health issues.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got talked about.
Right.
Made me grimy. Made me tough. Billy all of a sudden wants to shoot up the school.
Right.
So, but they're more accepting, more inclusive than ever. And this, Mr. Kelly, you shouldn't be saying that. You're right. But it was funny.
Yeah.
So is the war on education and the cost of education, how are those two things related?
Well, there's no war on the education because if you look at what America spends on defense, I'm going to say $1 trillion. There's only $250 billion on education. And then we got all this money on defense, and half of the people, all the 200 some countries in the world, I think, all but 3 are our allies. So why are we protecting and I've been out the classroom a while as far as the numbers and the dynamics of everything, but I'm using hyperbole too to saying it. But the war on education now is that kids, I think, are demanding to be taught differently, and they're being educated differently. And it's up to leadership and systems to change to meet the new need for the people that we're serving.
Right.
That's the difference. And I also think, I hear this now and people don't get this. School costs so much. I said, man, school isn't in whatever you need to do to invest in yourself. And if you ain't got it, you got to borrow. Hell, I started the show with student loans.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't take them out because
Right.
I took them out because I didn't have no other means or anyone investing in me, right?
Right.
And so that part there, and so the war, there's no war on, I think the war on education comes down to how are we going to educate the new generation of kids? Because the post-agrarian strategies are not as effective anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a large group of people that, if you have kids say, I could become an influencer, right? Now, how do we shape the business? Now, this is math.
Right.
This is what you were saying earlier, Sean, is now you want to be an influencer. Here's the things you need to know, right?
Right.
Because if I get 10,000 likes on YouTube, I'm all of a sudden, I can lock myself out of going to college.
Right.
Right? NIL. So educating them on those and making it relevant for them. And so I just think if there is a war, it's the way that we're approaching it to serve all people. And the real war is, though, Black men being walked out of schools for whatever reasons.
Right.
And it's the lack of Black or brown presence in schools is definitely a problem.
Yeah, nah. I 1,000% agree. Something we didn't touch on earlier, man, was this award of excellence that you just received.
Oh,
man.
Nice.
First of all, congratulations on that, brother.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Somebody nominated me, Illinois Administrator, I think, Excellence Award or something. And first I was like, I ain't doing this. I had to write an essay, and parents had to, and then students had to write, and
Right.
so someone nominated me, and then they seen this thing, and they vetted, and they put me in this rubric. And somebody think I'm doing good work over there, right? And so
According
I
to
was
the numbers, you are.
Yeah.
The numbers, that's the game. That's the game.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, outside the numbers, I always tell people this. I said, they evaluate me and they want to say, this is basic and this is proficient and this is distinguished, this, that, and that. And I say, walk through the building with me.
Right.
That's the part that's the most enjoyable. Like, hey, walk through, fist bump, high five, blah, blah, blah. I had some kids talking about, I know people's name, but I don't know your name. So it was a big dog.
Right.
Hey, sweetie. All of that. Everybody
Right,
fist bump in the
right.
morning, and hand sanitizer, things of that nature. But they was like, well, they didn't do nothing for us for SAT. Why I got to give you an incentive for something you need to graduate? Like, you needed to graduate. That's what this intrinsic motivation and self-awareness. And so they take them to the movies. They take them to see Air. Then they complain about Air. They say you can't win. Then we didn't get any shirts, Kelly. I'm like, damn. And I'm taking y'all to Great America June 5th. Because I take all this physics.
Right.
So physics is about,
Okay.
acceleration and
I
motion.
was say you
Right.
taking the whole school to Great America?
Right. I'm like,
Well, no, I
damn.
take them back class.
Right,
So
right.
I take them. So my freshmen, since this particular junior class who just took the SAT, were in COVID at the time. So that's the real reason I don't really know them. They were in COVID, and so they missed out on, so they took physics online. So I'm going to make up for it, we're going to Six Flags as other known, because I said Great America. Kid was looking at me like,
Right, like Great America.
I was like, damn,
Yeah.
I'm really a dinosaur, right? So Six Flags. So we're going to last year we took 276 kids. We're going to take another 250 this year and have a great time. And so those are the types of things, like, hell, I'm about to throw a skate party in the gym during the middle of the day. It's like, how do we break up the monotony of this? Because it's boring. You heard of me in every morning, bell ring, you go, we're going to produce.
Repetitive. A lot of repetitive.
A lot of redundant. It's monotonous. Like, there's times I'm sitting in meetings from 8:15 to 2:36. And kids come, Kelly, I ain't seen you all day. And so then they come and interrupt the meeting, and I tell people beforehand, my kid's gonna come in here.
Right.
And we're not doing nothing that serious that kids can be ignored. And so that part, they come in and need a pop or want this, or they hug, or sit there and take my phone, take pictures of themselves and all this type of stuff.
Right.
And come on, Kelly, we do it.
Just giving them that attention.
If that's what you call it, it was.
I mean, that,
Remember, man, we didn't know our principle,
Yeah.
whatever that means, whatever principle means.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's some cliche. people gonna remember, like I might not treat adults that well. Let me own that, right?
Right.
But kids, Kelly Tree, I talk a bunch of stuff.
Right.
I do a lot of praise and this and another, but I said the relationships and the connection is huge there. And I have them more with girls than boys for some reason. Like the guys don't like to be talked about.
No, I mean, you taking a stab at the ego, man.
Like, girl come in with, long hair and
right, the head prints on the eyes.
You got a caterpillar on your thing. Kelly, you got something to say?
Right.
You look beautiful though, baby. You don't think you need it. Like I got a little girl, she come in, man, she look like Boondocks. She had 2 puffs. Then she let it out the other day. She was looking like Thelma.
Right.
I was like, hey, but that's the part I encourage. Like, love you. I think we're in a situation where we have, we're raising kids that look in the mirror and don't look at themselves and see, sweetie, you got to embrace your big lips.
Exactly.
And your big eyes and your big forehead and your 9 ether hair.
Right.
You got to, because if you don't think you look good, who else going to think you look good?
Absolutely.
Now you talk about, what was it? Learn helplessness. Think about self-hate.
Yeah.
Just think about self-hate, man. And every day they come and I can show you, never be quiet because the picture.
But that goes back to mental health. You say self-hate, and then the way they look at themselves and they ain't pretty enough.
Man, you gotta.
Or for the guys, they ain't strong enough. Or,
And we gotta have those things like the help. I'm smart. I'm pretty. I'm kind. I'm beautiful. You have to have that self-talk.
Yeah.
And so when I say I made it off 63rd, there wasn't no nice stuff in my house. My mother asked stuff through questions.
Right.
And my brother was just, it was survival of the fittest in the house. So your self-talk had to be great.
Right.
And so I shared with my baby girl, I said, when the voices outside your head get louder than the one in your head, you're in trouble. And so what we got to do is teach our kids how to have great self-talk. And that's modeled. So when they see this and all that, and they're going to mimic that. They think that's beauty. They don't think, my girl with her Boondocks, 2 puffs and come with her thing. And
so your daughter ain't got none of these? She ain't got them eyebrows?
My daughter she couldn't wear high-top gym shoes till she was grown. Girls wear tree tones.
Yeah, man. I feel that, man. And that's important. We grew up in a time where, there was still a community and a respect for, your elders and, people of that position. And you're reinstilling that, or you're instilling that into today's generations of kids on a daily basis. And that's an amazing thing.
One of the people I've read say people teach what they value. And at the end of the day, I said, I value learning and I value risk taking.
Right.
Right. And that comes with faith. Like I grew up in the church. I was baptized when I was 8 years old and everything. And, but like things that get greater later, I didn't know what that means.
Right.
But when you go to church, they say, put your hands in the air. If God been good to you. Now, I don't do this, but I'm like this. I got alligator. I'm like, I ain't on 63rd no more.
Right.
63rd is in my heart.
Yeah.
Right? And it allows me to, the 4 continents I've been to, it allowed me to do those things. But in general, it's like, that's what I want kids to have. Like that. Can you be, and I use grit and grimy, but there's a toughness that come from, I know kids that's verbally tough, but they're afraid of words. You don't read. How you go in a fight and you can't read for 2 minutes?
Right.
Come on, man.
We just got a few more questions before we wrap this up.
Yeah, a few more questions.
So is education fulfilling its purpose?
It did for me. And I think, yes. Well, it goes back to, when you talk about tracking and delaying people into the market economy and everything, we provide compulsory education for all in our society. If we didn't, everybody would be going at each other, not in a negative sense, but to, whatever we did before education became this tool to transform lives in our society. I think there are places when they use these metrics where America appears to be falling behind, but I don't think I think that's when you lump everyone together. When you disaggregate that data, the people that have been doing well, because they're familiar with the words on the test, are still doing well. Blacks haven't made the advancement from the I want to say the Monahan report, but it's another report that eludes me right now for the sake of this conversation. In that progress, the data actually shows we're worse off.
Yeah, you said America was falling behind, opposed to other countries.
Well, there are numbers that say that America's falling behind, but when you disaggregate it and break it down, you have to say, well, are blacks falling behind? Are whites falling behind? Who's falling behind? And I say the people that are in power and have resources, their numbers probably still look the same.
Right.
It's everybody else. Because if you don't get the quality education, you can't transform your life. So now you broke. That's why we're afraid to go to school, because I can't, I got to take this money and invest in myself. But then I get this mediocre job that I can't pay the loan back. So I'm perpetuating this poverty.
Right.
Right. And so that piece there. And so is it fulfilling its purpose? Yes.
In America, is fulfilling, because I know overseas they go to school a lot longer on a daily basis than we do here. Is that correct?
In some places I've heard that, but in other places I've heard
China,
that.
Japan, they go 12 hours.
But that's a whole different other culture, man.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm in Japan. Sensei. Right? Sensei Brian Kelly. That means teacher. But being a teacher in Latin culture and in Asian culture,
you're a master.
Woo.
So it holds a high esteem.
Woo. Please. Here, the doctor tells you to take something that you can't read and you do it.
Right.
The teacher tells you something about your kid and you challenge them.
Right.
And they've been doing this for years. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
But also, I think we disrespect it sometimes. We see ourselves as laborers, not as professionals. And society treats us as such. But to answer the question, do I think, America's educational system is a tracking system. And because my question that I had as I read more, if everybody had master's degrees, who's going to work at McDonald's?
Right.
That was like, who's going to do it? Who's signing up? I got a master's degree. I'm going to sweep the floor. First thing you on the job doing, not sweeping. But I ain't go to school for this. So
unless they pay me what I would get paid for my job as a master's degree, you gonna pay me how much to sweep
this
these floors?
comes back to, I tell people, I said, man, if I was the janitor, you ain't gonna have to tell me to do my job.
Right.
I got people that leave notes up in the bathroom, like, why y'all keep pooping in the toilet?
It's the toilet for, right?
You ain't got no notes up in your. Why you
I'll
keep pooping
email
in
them
the
to
toilet?
you. Somebody put a note up. Somebody responded to the note. So they take screenshots and send it to me. That's it.
Like, look at this stupidity. Somebody
Right.
put up there, why you keep pooping in the toilet? Where else you supposed to poop at?
Ain't no kids in here to be cleaning up at the toilet. Your job is, regardless of what.
This is your job.
This is your job.
Yeah.
Or don't take the job.
Right.
So that one, I say I would, because I would want competitively, I would want to be the best at it. That's regardless of what my title was.
So yeah.
You had one more. That was only one question. You had one
I'm
more
waiting
question,
on
man.
Carson to
I
answer. I
want
know he
all
got
the
some more questions over there.
Oh man, I thought you
Carson
had
been freestyle. He been asking questions off of my responses. It's like that's what I do in
There's
interviews.
definitely some more questions. I want to know.
You guys can bring me back. We can change it to 30
we're
minutes.
definitely going to bring you back. But talk to me about, do the kids know the impact that Dr. Martin Luther King has had on America?
Well, do they
I
care?
got to know that.
Well, that's King's Day of service, right? So they're familiar. Happy birthday to you. 53 years, 55 years, 55 years since he was murdered, right? August 4th, 55 years since he was murdered. Brandon Johnson becomes mayor of Chicago, right? On the 55th anniversary. It never makes sense to me. Anniversary of Martin Luther King being slain. They do, but think about learning something over and over till you tune it out. So who are the other people?
Right.
Right.
Who are the
Did you
honorable
learn
mentions?
about Bayard Rusty? Right. That these individuals who was along, who paved the way for Martin to become the front man.
Right.
There was a march on Washington before 1963. It was A. Philip Randolph.
Right.
So people have done that work. How did he become it? So I've studied them extensively. And so do they? Yes. Do they understand that he was a man? Like I like for people to, I had this thing called hero
Right.
or villain. One of my class things was hoe or hero. And so we have this way we either make you or break you. And so this lady during the World War II, she prostituted herself to the Russian soldiers. They were going to do what they're going to do anyway.
Right.
She said, do whatever you want. Just give me some bread so I can feed my kids.
Right.
And for the next 7 years, she serviced the Russian soldiers, however you want to say it, to make sure I'm right, because it'll be, but I'm giving the story. It's called a book called German Boy. Her kids live through this experience. They come to America, become fighter pilots. Is she a hoe or a hero, right? And the way that we villainize things and this, that, and the other, it's like that's the nuances of what our education should be able to do, right?
Right.
And so when we get to Dr. King, is I think we've told the same story
so many
without
times.
seeing him as a man, and we've inundated our society. Whereas, who's the new Martin?
Right.
And it's like he had a dream. Are we fulfilling the dream? The dream didn't die. Martin told that he gave that speech. Everybody close, because they wasn't listening to him.
Right.
At the March on Washington. And then he brought out I Have a Dream. And everybody else knew because, he was up there talking. I'm like, yeah, everybody on the side getting high and just kicking it and doing what you do, doing the march, And then he brought out, he did something familiar. So then the world learned about the dream of the preach, what he preached more than 5 or 10 times before then.
Right.
And so given that piece, so what made Martin a great leader was he was always knew how to pivot.
Right.
Let's talk about the nuance. I mean, I have a couple of his books, but he talked about leadership and how do you pivot? How do you know when that they're not getting, but also learn those things as a teacher. And so had he lost his impactfulness and this, that, and the other to some, but I think if you compare and contrast them to other individuals and other leaders who didn't have that national stage or who we didn't put out there. I always talk about the NAACP. NAACP didn't come to NAACP, the white people joined. Matter of fact, they went to Canada. It was called the Niagara Movement.
Right.
And so breaking those things down, and Martin was able to, you could pull back the veil of Martin, not in any negative sense, but just in who the man was and his challenges. That dude was scared.
Yeah.
I
He
mean,
was only,
scared.
30, what?
Well, he died at 39?
Yeah.
But
Why would you
imagine
think
being
he's that old?
25, being 25 when he becomes the leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But they would call his house in the middle of the night, wake him up. If you don't leave town, we're going to blow up your house and blow up your kids. Who the hell knows how to live with that? So I fall back on when I talk about, I don't get religious and everything, but that's when you know and become about being real. He said, I have to make religion real for me.
Right.
So he just started, even though he was scared as hell, he walked out on faith. Hell, he walking up here, some drop on the ground.
Yeah.
It was before he got his head busted at Marquette Park, but he drops, a car backfires. He
Right.
thought he was dead.
I can understand.
That's how,
Yeah.
you follow me? And so that type of fear, like having that target on your back, you're hated.
Yeah.
Let's examine that, versus the I Have a Dream speech is great, right? But there are other things that made that dude a monster, right? And I don't think we cover that part enough because you would actually really be inspiring the common person.
Right.
Because the one thing that he said, and we can end on this, is everyone can be great because everyone can serve. And I chose to serve in education. That's my platform of how I give back. Each person, if you dig into them, each person to learn how they can go about serving others, then that'll be the dream, right? That piece there. And so I don't think they tell that story about Martin enough.
No, and I understand that because that's important to be able to, look at the man and, see yourself and, you see the flaws, but you also see the greatness, so that's your last words. You got any other words you want to leave the viewers with?
I'll be back.
I'll be back. In the words of the great
Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator.
Right.
But no, man, I think I'm in awe of you guys, and you guys share some disparaging things when I walked in about people pulling away from what I've always liked, particularly about this young man. is that he loves this.
Right.
And he sticks to it. And as you know, whether it's artist or entertainer or whatever the title, I don't know what the hell the title is, right? He's taught himself each level of it with a level of thing. But it goes back to this part y'all don't know. Him being a computer age drafted city champion, and he has that level of detail.
Yeah.
That's the part that and so that piece there, that's the part that when I share, I'm like, this is what this young man is doing and how he has inspired. You talk about inspiring. He has inspired me. It took him 20 years to get an associate degree.
Right.
That's inspiring.
That's right. Like,
a 2-year degree took me 20 years to get it right. Probably did.
Well,
that's right. You're like, I mean, I'm going to get it. I'm going to figure this out.
The real story was failed gym. Athlete, tennis, baseball player, failed gym, right? And he had to go to summer school to take it. So he had to take it at the junior college. You know, I remember this about. He had to take it at the junior college. So his track record started early. And so when he finally finished, his transcript said 1989 to 2009.
Oh man. Yeah, man. It's it's a long road to greatness.
Oh yeah.
But you got to stay the course.
But I just think that's what I mean when I wanted to start when I lost track with being silly. Is stay in the course. Like we get started on things and then we dissolve over stuff that when you really look back and reflect, it's so petty. So petty. Come out here, use this flat form and get y'all stuff out the way that you want. Who cares?
Right.
Here's the part. If you can go, most of the people go to the record company and you don't even hear them. They become writers.
Right.
It's okay to be the writer.
Right.
Matter of fact, I don't know how much they get, but that's a good amount.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You actually, you're right. You
see what I'm saying?
You get equity into the records as a writer.
And so when we get bogged down on the details early up, we're stopping ourselves from being great.
Right.
This goes back to, stepping out on the limb and having faith.
Right.
And so that piece there. And so when I sit here and we have a part where my boy that was sitting on this side isn't here anymore, it's discouraging to me that we're ruining our greatness before we get started.
Please don't give up now. Please don't give up on me. Don't you give up now. Don't you give up.